Christmas morning should be about family, love, and gratitude. Instead, I woke up to a text from my son that destroyed 32 years of fatherhood in a single sentence. "Dad, we voted. You're no longer part of this family. Get out of our house." What Robert didn't know was that his Uncle Edward had left me $4.2 million 6 months ago, with one very specific condition that was about to change everything. William Hayes sat in his favorite armchair in the Chicago suburban home he'd called his own for 15 years, staring at his phone screen in disbelief. At 62, the retired construction contractor had spent Christmas mornings for over 3 decades watching his children open presents, sharing coffee with family, and feeling grateful for the life he'd built after his wife Margaret passed away 8 years ago. This Christmas was different. The house felt empty despite being full of people. His son, Robert, 34, a marketing manager, sat stiffly on the couch beside his wife Jessica, 31, a real estate agent who'd been systematically poisoning the family against William since they married 2 years ago. Their twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, both 7, played quietly in the corner, sensing the tension that had been building for months. "Dad, we need to talk," Robert said, his voice cold and rehearsed. Jessica's hand was on his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging slightly into his sleeve, a gesture of control William had noticed before. "Of course, son. It's Christmas morning. What's on your mind?" Jessica spoke before Robert could answer. "William, we've been discussing your living situation. This house is too big for one person, and frankly, Robert and I need the space for our growing family." William's chest tightened. This was his house, purchased with his own money after Margaret's death, a place where he'd hoped to spend his final years surrounded by grandchildren and holiday memories. "We think," Jessica continued, her voice saccharine but her eyes hard, "that you'd be much happier in a senior community, somewhere with people your own age, activities, maybe even some romance." Robert nodded along, though William could see the discomfort in his son's eyes. "Dad, you're lonely here. And let's be honest, you're getting older. What if something happens and no one's around to help?" What they didn't know was that William had been expecting this conversation for months. Jessica's campaign against him had been subtle but persistent. Comments about his outdated furniture, suggestions that he was becoming a burden, casual mentions of how much the house was worth in today's market. More importantly, what they didn't know was that 6 months ago, William's wealthy brother Edward had passed away, leaving behind a fortune from his successful tech company. The reading of Edward's will was private, attended only by William and Edward's longtime attorney, Margaret Chen. Edward had never married, never had children, and had always been protective of William, especially after Margaret's death. The will was specific and unusual. William would inherit $4.2 million, but with one condition that Edward had insisted upon after watching Jessica's manipulation tactics during family gatherings. "Dad," Robert continued, pulling out his phone, "we found a beautiful assisted living facility in Naperville. It has everything you need: meals, activities, medical care on site." Jessica smiled her real estate agent smile. "And the house? Well, Robert and I have been pre-approved for a mortgage. We can take over the payments, keep it in the family. Everyone wins." William looked around the living room he'd decorated with Margaret's help, at the Christmas tree where his granddaughters should have been excitedly opening presents instead of sitting silently in the corner. "And if I don't want to move?" Jessica's mask slipped slightly. "William, let's not make this difficult. Robert is your only child. We're offering you a graceful transition to a more appropriate living situation." "More appropriate for whom?" "For everyone," Robert said, his voice gaining confidence from Jessica's coaching. "Dad, we've made our decision. The moving truck comes next week. We've already put a deposit down on the Naperville place." William stood slowly, his knees protesting slightly, a reminder of 30 years in construction that had built the savings he'd used to buy this house. "I see. And my belongings? We'll help you sort through everything. Keep what's important, donate the rest. Fresh start, new chapter." What William didn't tell them was that Edward's will contained a very specific clause that their attorney, Margaret Chen, had helped Edward craft after witnessing Jessica's behavior at Edward's birthday party 6 months before his death. If William's children showed disrespect or attempt to manipulate him financially, the will stated, the inheritance shall be immediately transferred to the Children's Hospital Foundation of Chicago, and William shall receive only a modest monthly stipend. Edward had been crystal clear with Margaret Chen. "My brother is too kind for his own good. If his son tries to take advantage of him, especially if that woman is involved, I want him to learn the value of what he's throwing away." Margaret Chen had called William 2 weeks ago with an update that chilled his blood. "William, I've been monitoring the situation as Edward requested. I know about the assisted living facility, and I know about Robert and Jessica's mortgage pre-approval. Edward's condition is about to be triggered." Now, sitting in his living room on Christmas morning as his son and daughter-in-law systematically dismantled his life, William realized Edward had predicted this moment with remarkable accuracy. "There's one more thing," Jessica said, consulting notes on her phone. "We'll need you to sign some paperwork transferring the house deed. Just a formality, but it needs to be done before the move." This was it, the final insult that would trigger Edward's clause. They weren't just forcing him out, they were trying to steal his property in the process. William walked to his desk and pulled out a business card. "Before I sign anything, I think we should call my attorney." "Your attorney?" Robert frowned. "Dad, this is family business. We don't need lawyers involved." "Oh, I think we do," William said, dialing Margaret Chen's number. "In fact, I think there are some things about our family business that you both need to understand." Margaret Chen arrived within an hour, her presence immediately changing the atmosphere in the room. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expensive briefcase, she commanded respect in ways that made Jessica visibly uncomfortable. "Good morning, William," Margaret said, then nodded politely to Robert and Jessica. "I understand we're discussing living arrangements and property transfers." Jessica's smile was strained. "Yes, just helping William transition to a more suitable living situation." Margaret opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Before we discuss any transfers, I think everyone should understand the full scope of William's current financial situation." Robert leaned forward. "Financial situation? Dad, is there something wrong? Are you having money problems?" "Not problems, exactly," Margaret said, spreading documents across the coffee table. 6 months ago, William inherited a substantial sum from his brother Edward. Jessica's face went pale. "Inherited? How much?" Margaret looked directly at Robert. "Edward Haste left his entire estate, valued at $4.2 million, to William. However, the inheritance came with very specific conditions." The room fell silent except for the ticking of William's grandfather clock. Robert stared at the documents, his mouth slightly open. $4.2 million? Robert whispered. Margaret nodded. Edward was quite specific about the conditions. The inheritance would be William's to use as he saw fit, provided his children treated him with respect and dignity. Jessica's mask finally cracked completely. "What do you mean, conditions?" Margaret continued calmly. "Edward included a clause that if William's children attempted to manipulate him financially, force him from his home, or show fundamental disrespect for his autonomy, the entire inheritance would be donated to charity." Robert's face crumpled as he realized what was happening. "Oh God, Dad, we didn't know. If we had known about the money..." "If you had known about the money, you would have treated me differently?" William asked quietly. Robert, that's exactly why Edward included the clause. Margaret pulled out another document. I'm afraid the conditions have been met. This morning's conversation, the forced relocation, the attempt to transfer property ownership, Edward anticipated all of it. She handed William a check. $4.2 million has been transferred to the Children's Hospital Foundation of Chicago. They'll be announcing a new pediatric wing in Edward Hayes' name next week. Jessica stood up so quickly she knocked over her coffee mug. You can't be serious. That money should stay in the family. It would have, if the family had treated me like family instead of like an inconvenience. Robert buried his face in his hands. Dad, I'm sorry. Jessica, she convinced me that you were becoming a burden, that we needed to take care of you. By taking care of my house and my belongings while shipping me off to a facility? William's voice was gentle but firm. Son, taking care of someone doesn't mean taking away their dignity. 6 months later, William Hayes still lived in his Chicago suburban home, surrounded by the memories he'd chosen to keep and the space he'd earned through decades of hard work. Robert and Jessica had divorced. The financial strain of their failed schemes and the reality of Jessica's manipulation had destroyed their marriage. Robert visited regularly now, often bringing Emma and Sophie for weekend stays. Without Jessica's influence, he'd gradually rebuilt his relationship with his father, although both men understood that some trust would take years to restore. The Children's Hospital Foundation had indeed named their new pediatric wing after Edward Hayes, and William attended the dedication ceremony with quiet pride. Edward had protected him one final time in a way that helped hundreds of children while teaching valuable lessons about respect and family. Grandpa, why did Mommy Jessica leave? William considered his words carefully. Sometimes adults make choices based on money instead of love, sweetheart. Your daddy learned that family is more valuable than anything you can buy. Is that why Uncle Edward gave his money away? William smiled, thinking of his brother's wisdom. Uncle Edward gave his money away to remind us that love and respect can't be bought. They have to be earned and freely given. Have you ever had to choose between financial gain and family loyalty? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Hidden Hearth for more stories about family values, hidden inheritances, and the true meaning of respect.